essentially, I came here to Hong Kong because my husband got transferred with his job, and that was quite a long time ago. I wasn't too sure about coming to Hong Kong because in previous years, I've been living, as you can kind of see from my background, in the Caribbean. So it was rather a different kind of place to come to. And I remember being very shocked by the high rise and the fact that, there wasn't the kind of the blue, the azure sea and the clear waters and whatever of the Cayman Islands. But yeah, so we came here in 1997, and it was in the end an absolutely lovely place to come to. So not what I expected at all. Much more countryside, and much more in terms of diversity than I had perhaps expected to. So a lovely move in the end. When I first came, I'd been a head of English in a school in England. And then before that, I'd been, as I say, at the Cayman Islands High School. And at the Cayman Islands High School, I taught special needs, and I taught English, and I taught PE, and I taught drama as well. I always taught drama. As an English teacher, you always end up teaching drama, whether you want to or not. And anyhow, so when I came to South Island, interestingly, they were probably more interested in me teaching PE than English, which I wasn't too sure about, but hey. So I did quite a lot of PE. I used to teach GCSE PE, and I taught, I think, mostly years 7 to 9, and then year 10 and 11 as well. And then I taught English too. And then as time went on, I taught more and more English, which was much more to my taste. I've also taught some drama as well, just briefly. And I've taught a few other things as well. I taught quite a lot of PSE as well in years gone past, which I really enjoyed. It was lovely. And we had a course called Learn to Learn for a while as well. So I taught that. Yeah, so a kind of a real mix. But increasingly as time went on, it became pretty much all English, which I was, fairly happy about. It was absolutely great. Fine. So when I first came, because I was a PE teacher, people used to think that I could do things like, dance and stuff like that, which was completely and utterly rubbish. And I remember vividly in my first kind of 2 or 3 years, I always used to get kind of like inveigled into joining things like, kind of where there was some sort of a staff dance on stage. Well, if ever you've seen me even do something as simple as the Gongxi song at Chinese New Year, or know my sense of rhythm is not that great. And doing these kind of like dance things, particularly when it was together with students that were really very good at dancing, and I was completely rubbish. It was completely embarrassing, and I absolutely hated it. So probably my most memorable moments were on the stage, being unable to actually kind of follow movements very well, attempting to hide behind people, and attempting also to kind of make sure that I got off the stage as quickly as possible. So dance at South Island School, I suppose, was fairly memorable for me, for very unpleasantly memorable. More pleasant memories are probably things like some of the Making a Difference events that I helped students organise. One of the most memorable probably was a walk for cancer. I think some of you might have been involved in the walk for cancer. Some of you might have been there when you were quite young. And it involved walking around Black's Link on a fairly hot day. We had the whole school doing this walk. And it started for various reasons, but the students found it quite tough, because I have to say that climbing the stairs up to Black's Link was absolutely horrendous. I don't know how we managed to get students out round the course and back again without more tears than perhaps Eugenie's and a few other kind of students that probably found it quite hard. But we raised on that walk about $328,000 for cancer relief, which was pretty amazing. I think probably another memory that some of you will remember will be the attempt that we made on the Guinness World Record for most number of star jumps. That one was pretty awesome, I have to say. Again, it was something that the students wanted to do. And again, it was a fundraiser for what was then our ICM kindergarten jump start. That was how the idea of doing the most jumping jacks, in one place together at one time. And it was a logistical nightmare, to say the least, but it was all good fun. We had different houses in different locations. We had a drone flying over the top to kind of check, who was doing what. We had people in the playground. We had people on the AstroTurf. We had the whole thing being coordinated. Daryl, all I can say is thank goodness you weren't communications officer, because that was having to coordinate it from the general office was quite hard, but it was an absolutely amazing event. And then the last one that probably I remember was when a previous student, Sneha, came to me and wanted to do a fundraiser with a difference for our ICM Jumpstart. She wanted to have a talent show, but she wanted to have a parent talent show. And I couldn't see how this was going to work because it was the last 10 days of, or about the last 2 weeks of term 3 with, it was hot. It was kind of the end of the year, who was going to do it? And she goes, well, I think I can get the parents if you can help me organize this. Okay, fine, we'll do it. So we got the hall, we got everything kind of sorted. I have never seen so many parents in my life. It was amazing. It was absolutely unbelievable. So that event was absolutely memorable. Not only was it a fantastic fundraiser, but, one person to come and to say, I want to do something as incredible, as a parent talent show was just unforgettable. All of them, of course. I mean, all of the people that are here at the moment are unbelievable, and they will always stay in my memories for sure, many of whom I've taught. I'm trying to kind of see and think, well, Ryan as a member of NAMA's house is, of course, unforgettable, without a doubt. All NAMA sites are, because, being head of NAMA's was one of my biggest joys, of course. Huge as head girl was unbelievable. Carlinda has survived 2 years in my English class, so that's got to be worth something for sure. Adele, you have also made it through 2 years, in fact 3 years, because I taught you in year 7 of English with me, and that's got to take a medal. Zoe, I think you're going to be memorable, unbelievably memorable, because the amount of work you have done for iSupport, the amount of work you have done for TEDx has been absolutely unbelievable. I take my hat off to you. So yeah, lots and lots of people memorable. The head prefect teams I've worked with, everyone in my kind of English classes, my Mad Council leaders have all been unbelievable. I had 2 year groups, one of whom I took all the way through from year 7 to year 11. And I did see one name, Anjali, there, who was in my year group, my original year group. And then the second year group I took into year 8, and then we changed from year groups into houses. And that's when I moved to being head of NAMAS. So, students that are in my year group, students that are in my house, yeah, very, very, very memorable. Well, clearly being a swimmer, South Island swimming pool has always been dear to my heart. I vividly remember, you'll all know that my daughters were at the school. Well, when Iz was first born, when I was on maternity leave, I was desperate to try and stay fit. So when she was only like 2 or 3 weeks old, I used to come into school with her in the little kind of car seat, and I used to put her at the end of the swimming pool on the end of the lane where I was swimming. And at that point, the lifeguard that was the head lifeguard was Paul, who was here for many, many years, and he used to laugh at me. He used to keep an eye on Izzy, and he used to make sure that she stayed asleep while I was swimming. So swimming pool, definitely kind of memorable. Couple of rooms that I taught in for a few years. I taught in C53 and C56, and they were very dear to my heart when I used to have my own teaching room. That was fantastic. And then probably the bamboo office where I was as head of NAMAS. That was absolutely fantastic. Anjali, it's lovely to see you. Absolutely fantastic. I was just talking about our year group that you were in so many years ago. Lovely to see you.
My connection kept dropping out, but I'm back.
You're back. Fantastic to see you. Fantastic to see you. So lots of memorable places around the school for sure. But, the school, I think one of the most memorable things is also the view from the school. When I walk into the space and when I look out over, kind of Ocean Park and that beautiful greenery down Namfung Road, you've got to kind of, you've got to think to yourself, what a fantastic place, to be kind of working. And it was interesting when the people came into school that made the school video. I remember they were kind of looking around and making a beautiful video of the location of our site and the people in it. And I remember one of the guys commenting and saying, they'd been to another ESF school, which shall remain nameless. And they said, my goodness, it was so hard to make that place look good. But he said, here, we have no problem. It's a beautiful, beautiful location. And I totally agree. I'll be in Hong Kong probably till about mid-July even. And at that point, I'll be initially heading back to the UK. My father-in-law's 93, so he really needs some care now. So initially, we're going to go back and make sure he's okay in the UK. And that'll be in southwest London. So any of you that are in London or in the UK, we would love to kind of catch up. Angeli, where are you?
I'm here in London. I'm in Camden.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
Let me know, not too far.
No, not too far indeed. So I'll be living in kind of splitting my time between Kew, southwest London, and the New Forest, where my father-in-law lives. But we've always had a dream that we're not going to probably stay in the UK, or certainly not kind of full time in the UK. And I think our heart still is in the Caribbean, where we used to live. So it's just a question of trying to persuade my husband as to where we can perhaps, buy somewhere, or where we can kind of live for at least part of the year. One of the things I haven't missed at all in the UK is definitely the greyness, the darkness, the rain. So it's making sure that we've got somewhere that we can escape to that's a little bit brighter. That's my idea. So yeah, UK, and then we'll see from there. So that's a great question, Carlinda, and it's still got some question marks on it. For a while, Chartwell's used to do on a Friday. They used to do quite a good fish and chips. And I remember they had crinkly chips, and crinkly chips were really cool. They were very, very good. Not very healthy, I have to say, but definitely cool. I happened to be born in Scotland purely because my parents were living in West Africa, but they thought I was going to they were living in the back of beyond in Ghana in a place called Kumasi, and they thought I was going to need a blood transfusion. So that's why my mum came back to the UK. But when I was about 2 weeks old, they came back to Ghana. So I was christened in Ghana, I was christened in Kumasi. My parents actually married in Nigeria. They met and married in Nigeria. My brother was born there. So we were in West Africa. That's where you're thinking Ethiopia, I think. We lived there until I was maybe about 5. And then we lived in the Middle East. We lived in Abu Dhabi because my dad worked for BP. So that's why we kind of lived all over the place. Yeah. So I remember coming back to boarding school as a kid, not having lived in England really at all. And I remember, England being quite a shock. And I remember at the age of 9 having difficulty, this sounds really stupid, but having difficulty putting gloves on because I'd never worn gloves. And it was all a bit kind of like, oh my God, the scarves and gloves and things like that. So those of you that are now living in freezing cold climes will maybe, relate to that a little bit. What an interesting class, because you were also very, very different. And so many people doing, very different, kind of having very different focus in terms of their interests and in terms of their IB subjects as well. So very interesting class, and interesting also in terms of the way you brought into different texts as well. Angeli will remember some of the texts that I'm going to talk about, texts like the things they carried, that fantastic novel that works so well with some students and then less well perhaps with others. Some people liking and loving maybe, think people like Caroline Duffy and then others not. So really, really what an interesting class, and lovely that, you kind of all found something to kind of get into in English. But, never was it the whole class perhaps into the same thing. So very, very interesting indeed. I've taught in quite a number of schools, and some schools have been very, very tough. I mean, I talked a little bit about the Cayman Islands High School. That's got to be one of the most tough schools that I've ever taught in. It was a very interesting school, to say the least. When I came back from Cayman, I also taught in what in England was called the Boys Secondary Modern School, and I was teaching special needs there, and that was pretty tough school too, because they were about to close the school down for very good reasons, and the boys there were really rather hard work. So I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is when you're a teacher, sometimes lessons land super well and sometimes they don't. And as a teacher, you always beat yourself up and you always think to yourself that, it's my fault, I didn't get it right, whatever. But sometimes you actually have to look and you have to say, that was a fantastic lesson. That was a great teaching objective. But, it didn't work for those kids. It will work maybe for another class, and maybe I just need to recalibrate. I think as a teacher, you also have to learn to laugh at yourself a little bit as well, and not to sometimes take it too seriously. You know, I think over the years, you know, if you stand there and you expect everything to go well and you expect everyone to kind of, you know, respond to everything and you expect everything to be 100%, you're in cloud cuckoo land, because that ain't going to happen. So sometimes you have to kind of say to yourself, well, you know, I do the best I can. It'll work for most of the kids, hopefully. If it doesn't work for some kids, sometimes it'll work the next time. And you just have to kind of be a bit realistic like that. You have to hope also that you can make personal connections or connections of some sort with as many kids as you can. And that's perhaps what I've enjoyed most of all when I think about teaching. You know, it's not just standing in the classroom, it's all those lovely things that you've done outside the classroom, whether it be making a difference, whether it be, you know, working with the head prefect team, whether it be organising commencement or whatever it is. It's all of those lovely things that you have to kind of look at and you have to say, that's part of the package as well. And, you know, they're really, really absolutely enjoyable. But I think probably out of everything I've done, the most enjoyable things have been pastoral things, whether it's being a tutor, whether it's being head of year, whether it's being head of house. Really, really enjoyed those big time. So challenges, just kind of making sure you do your very best as a teacher and making sure you kind of get it right at least some of the time and make connections with as many kids as you can. And as I say, biggest lesson probably not to take it too seriously and to make sure that you don't beat yourself up and you just kind of get it done as well as you can for as many kids as you can. I'm a very sad kind of person in a way, because I never wanted to do anything else but teach, in the sense of, even as a 5-year-old, I was lining my teddy bears up and I was teaching them, and I had my blackboard and I was instructing them, and I was making sure that they paid their dinner money and did all the things that in those days you had to do, you know, as a kid. So I never really thought about anything else. The only thing I've done a little bit different, I suppose, I spent a year as a sports administrator at my university. I was what we called Sports Federation sabbatical. Some universities call it Athletic Union president. You know, you're elected as a person to run all the sports clubs. And I did that for a year, and that was really, really fantastic. Part of my remit was I ran a bar. I ran the sports bar, which was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, with drunken rugby players and whatever. It was not an easy one. But you soon learn to be commanding, even if you're only 5'3", and you soon learn to kind of tell people, you know, kind of what they can do and not do. But it was a fantastically brilliant job, and it was very varied, very, very diverse. So maybe something sports management related I might have done, I think. It's done it in all sorts of ways, Mavis. It's absolutely opened my eyes to ways that you can make a difference in Hong Kong. It's opened my eyes to also all the amazing things and associations that kids in our school have. You know, you find out about, through kids, you find out about organizations like Kids for Kids or I Support, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, there's so many organizations like that in Hong Kong. So it's opened my eyes to what you can do in places like Hong Kong and worldwide in terms of helping others. You know, it really, really is, you know, an absolutely amazing organization. Mad Council I love, because Mad Council, you know, is such a fantastic group of kids whose hearts very much are in the right place, and they want to make sure that kids at South Island School know how to make a difference, and they want them to be able to walk away being able to make a difference beyond South Island School as well. And I think kids do learn some amazing lessons in terms of how they can not just do charity work, but make a difference in a much wider kind of concept. Honestly, every time I walk into a classroom, it's almost never do I walk into a classroom and not want to be there. I always do. There's always something to latch onto. There's always somebody that is wanting to chat or needs a conversation, or, you know, and how can you not be excited about English? How can you not be excited about getting kids to read? You know, how can you not be excited about getting them to understand and be able to communicate better? Because, you know, if the world isn't about that, you know, it's not about anything. So it's easy to be enthusiastic. It's easy to be enthusiastic at South Island School as well, because, you know, 99 times out of 100, you'll walk into the classroom and kids want to be there. kids want to interact with you, and and they want to learn and they want to do well, which is absolutely fantastic. My toes into the water in primary teaching, which was a bit of a disaster, I have to say. When we first moved to the Cayman Islands, at that point I wasn't working, and I was so used to working, and this was a bit of a problem. So any school that wanted any cover, anything, I didn't care. I turned up and did it. So I spent some time at what was then called the Catholic school in Cayman, and that was a primary school, and I was covering for a couple of different teachers. But honestly, I found the whole thing of primary teachers are very, very good at setting routines for their students and making sure that the kids do things in a very measured way, which as a very enthusiastic secondary teacher, it didn't kind of work so well for me. I couldn't quite work out some of these routines, and the kids weren't always old enough to explain why they were doing what they were doing. And I remember in one class, two girls, obviously the teacher had this thing that every kid had to feel valuable by having a job. And these two lovely, lovely girls, their job was to bring a glass of water every morning and to put it on the teacher's desk at the beginning of the day. And they were obviously used to their teacher sitting behind the desk and kind of talking. Well, of course, I stood up, and as you can see, I was waving my hands quite a lot. And pretty much every day I knocked that glass of water over. And these poor two girls' faces, every time the water went flying, it broke their hearts, and I felt very sad. So I was very upset. That was my kind of primary school teaching, and I realized I clearly wasn't cut out for it. It's changed a lot. When I first came, lessons were 35 minutes long. So you were running from place to place all over the shop. It was horrendous. There used to be a short break, a long break, a lunch break. So there was all these crazy little breaks all over the place that were very difficult to get used to. They then changed things, and we went to 1 hour lessons, and we went to kind of fewer breaks and slightly longer breaks, which worked quite well. Angelique can probably remember when we had hour-long lessons, for example, I think when you first joined South Island School. It's changed also in terms of, I think the school's got a bit smarter. In terms of the decoration and whatever, I think it's a better looking place than when I first came. There are still areas that need to be picked up, but I think on the whole, it's prettier than it was. I think also it's become a more reflective place as well. I think when I first came, we taught a lot of things, did a lot of things because we'd always done them. It was quite a traditional school. And I think when Mr. Ray came, we started the process of beginning to rethink, why are we doing certain things? And certainly when Mr. Silverthorne came, even more so, he made us look at ourselves and think, well, is that the best way to do it? And I think that was a very, very good process. I think the students have always been there as a thread, though, all the way through. Whatever we've done in terms of teaching and lessons and whatever else we've done, I think the having fantastic students as the bedrock of the people that we're there to serve, the people that we're there to kind of not just educate, but perhaps kind of help to shape, have always been there. So lots of changes physically and in lessons and in curriculum and so on. We've changed from A levels to IB, we've changed from Key Stage 3 to MYP. We've done all of those changes, but much has stayed the same because of our students being, absolutely awesome all the way through. Maybe, I guess, my connection with Making a Difference, maybe my connection, I guess, in the English department and, being remembered as an English teacher. I think probably. I'm hoping I'd be remembered maybe as a head of house that, I hope cared for her students. I'd like to be remembered as that. Yeah, so I guess those are the main things. I'm actually still in contact with my PE teacher from school, who taught me when I was 9-10 years old, and into secondary school as well. And she inspired me because she was one of the very rare PE teachers that actually didn't care too much about whether you were good at PE, although I was okay at PE. But what she was into was you as a person. She was into how you were doing as a person. I suppose many moons ago, we didn't have that phrase well-being, but she really cared about kids' well-being. And that was what made her memorable. And that's probably why I'm still in contact with her when I think about it. And she must be, I guess she's in her 80s now. But it took me until probably only about maybe until I had my own kids that I could even call her by her first name. I couldn't stop, a bit like you would call me probably Mrs. Crouch. I had to call her Mrs. Mosling for many years, but she was really inspirational. And here at South Island, there's been many, many inspirational teachers, probably too many to name, you know, so many that have taught well and been fantastic with students in so many ways. That idea about, you know, living life to the full, I think that's the main thing. I think the one thing that I sometimes look around and think about at South Island is that, you know, we've got all these amazingly awesome students. Sometimes they're held back by fear of failure. Sometimes it's wanting to do the right thing and being too scared to kind of break out from the norm. So I would say you don't have to break out, you know, from the norm, but, you know, live your life, whatever that life is. You know, it's not about your parents' life. It's not about what your friends are doing. It's not about what your teachers want to do. It's not about necessarily going to the university that's got the posh name or whatever. It's about doing what's right for you and, you know, living life to the full. Ryan, can I ask where you are at the moment?
I'm in Toronto. It's like 4 a.m. right now.
Oh my God, you're up at 4 a.m. That is commitment beyond commitment, my boy. I'm impressed. Is your life happy?
Yeah, I'm graduating in next month.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
And will you stay in Toronto?
Yeah, I will. I'm trying to like apply for jobs right now, most likely in civil service. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, please stay in touch. Please stay in touch. I don't know if we're in touch on LinkedIn or somewhere like that, but please stay in touch because I would love to see how you're going. And Carlinda, you're heading off maybe to the US in the summer?
Yeah, probably going to UC, but I'm still waiting for a waitlist, so don't know.
Okay, so all the very, very best with that. And Anjali, you're in London. Oh, I hope I can catch up with you because you were such a regular visitor for so many years. You always used to come and say hello. So it would be fantastic to catch up with you. Are you settled there? Have you been there for some time?
No, for sure. I will say I did come to school a lot. One, because obviously I wanted to see you, but two, because I live 5 minutes away. So if people wanted to come, they would just
drag me along. Your parents lived in Parkview, I remember. Yeah.
So really, really close. I'm settled here for the most part. So I work in, of all things, science and medical communications. I know.
Interesting for a history graduate. What happened there?
Well, I specialized in medical history, and that was my little segue to health policy and whatever it is I do now. So it's 9 a.m. here, but my manager is not in. The perk of working from home.
Good grief.
But no, I'm currently based at King's College London. So very, very London. Yeah. So no, for sure, when you're here.
Oh, how lovely. That would be absolutely lovely to catch up. And you, thanks for saying that Lottie and Allegra would send their love, because I'm looking forward to seeing them as well. One of the beauties of going back to the UK will hopefully be being nearer Europe and being able to catch up with them. Oh, lovely. So absolutely lovely to see you all. Really, really, really good. Adele, Zoe, Michelle, Zoe Lee, you didn't speak up and I was expecting you to. And Mavis, how lovely of you to join. I'm really, really grateful. Lovely, and hopefully I wasn't too boring, and hopefully, you know, you've kind of learned a little bit more about me that you didn't know before. Maybe.